Imagine standing in a quiet field at night, the grass brushing against your legs, a breeze soft and steady, and above you, the endless sky. For a moment, you feel normal, your body, your breath, and your heartbeat steady. But tonight, we are going to shrink, not in leaps or jumps, but in calm, steady steps. Each step taking us deeper into reality, down past what your eyes can see, past what even microscopes can show, and finally, to the smallest places our minds can imagine. Hey guys, welcome to the Drowsy Astronaut. Tonight, we're going to drift into a strange journey, a journey of size, of scale, of perspective. We'll take this world you know so well and fold it downward, smaller and smaller, until the familiar becomes strange and the strange becomes beautiful. And by the end, we'll be standing at the edge of the quantum world itself. So, take a slow breath, let the tension of the day slip out of your shoulders, and imagine with me, as we begin this gentle shrinking, we start here, at the size of you, a human being, maybe 1.5 meters tall, give or take. You look down and see your hands, fingers flexing, skin stretching, bones moving beneath. You see the folds of fabric on your clothes, each thread winding across another. At this scale, reality feels ordinary, obvious. We see chairs and trees, mountains and seas, all of them proportioned to us. But this is only one view, one slice of scale in an infinite ladder. So let's take the first step down. Imagine shrinking until you are the size of a child's toy, 10 times smaller than before. Now, blades of grass tower above your knees, each one a green pillar, veins visible running up its side. The dirt beneath your feet is no longer smooth, but broken into ridges, pebbles the size of boulders. The world has grown wild already, and yet we've barely started. Shrink again, 10 times smaller still. Now you're only a few centimeters tall. The grass that brushed your ankles now stretches like trees, stems thick as trunks. The ground is a canyon floor. Moss looks like a dense forest. Ants scurry past like giant cattle, their antennae twitching, eyes glistening like black pearls. You can see the weave of your clothing, threads no longer smooth, but braided ropes, each fiber standing tall, with tiny strands splitting off its surface. What once felt soft now looks coarse and jagged, and we shrink again, another 10 times smaller, only a few millimeters tall now. The surface of your own hand stretches out like a landscape, ridges of fingerprints rising like hills, sweat pores dotting the valleys like wells, tiny hairs bristling from the ground like trees. The skin you thought was smooth is a rugged landscape, alive with detail. The ants that once felt large are now giants, their exoskeletons armored, their legs jointed like spears. They loom over you like monsters from another world, and yet they are still only insects, fragile in the larger scheme. But here, they feel like gods. Shrink again, and again. Now we're only fractions of 1 millimeter tall. A dust mote is a boulder, a grain of sand, a mountain. Pollen floats through the air like glowing balloons, each one covered in spikes and ridges, shapes that would look alien if you didn't know they fell from flowers. A housefly soars overhead, its wings moving in a blur. But to you, each beat is a thunderclap, each transparent membrane a stained glass window catching the sun. Its compound eyes glisten with thousands of lenses, like a mosaic of tiny mirrors staring in every direction. The air itself feels different here, no longer invisible, but heavy. You can sense the molecules moving past you, colliding, swirling. The world is thicker, slower, harder to move through, and yet we're still far from the bottom, still in the range of what microscopes can see. Shrink further until you are measured in micrometers, 1/1,000,000th of a meter tall. Now, you're smaller than a single grain of salt, smaller than the width of a human hair. The ants you once feared now tower above like continents, and your own skin, once hills and valleys, now opens up into vast plains. The pores are craters, deep and wide. The tiny hairs are tree trunks, each bristling with microscopic bark. Look closer, and you see cells beneath the surface, each one a soft bubble, membranes shifting gently. Inside them, faint structures shimmer, nuclei glowing like purple suns, mitochondria drifting like tiny engines. This is the cellular world, the city of life. A red blood cell drifts by, flat and round like a disc, its surface smooth, its color glowing softly crimson. This single cell carries oxygen, a simple duty, but repeated billions of times each moment. Without it, your body fails. And yet, it glides by, without awareness, without thought. Nearby, a white blood cell stretches and crawls, its body shifting like liquid, pseudopods reaching out, pulling it forward. It hunts invaders silently, its shape never fixed, but always flowing, like a ghost patrolling the living sea of the body. Plant cells stand rigid beside it, their walls stiff like stone, chloroplasts floating inside like emerald jewels, catching sunlight and turning it into life. These are the factories of green, the reason the field above your head glows with grass and leaves. This is life at the microscopic level, a place you've carried within you all along, but never seen until now. Pause here, because we are already in a strange world, a world smaller than anything your naked eyes could glimpse. And yet, it is still only the beginning. We've seen cells and their structures, but beneath them are molecules, and beneath those, atoms, and beneath atoms, something stranger still. But we will get there slowly, step by step. For now, you can rest among the cells, among the quiet movements of red blood discs, and the emerald drift of chloroplasts, floating softly, silently, in the microscopic sea. Because as we shrink further, the rules will begin to change, and the world you thought you knew will dissolve into something else entirely. We linger for a moment in the quiet world of cells, drifting among the soft membranes and jelly-like interiors, where each bubble of life holds mysteries of its own. The red blood cells slide past like tiny lifeboats on a vast, invisible ocean, carrying their unseen cargo of oxygen with a kind of unknowing grace. White blood cells crawl slowly, endlessly reshaping themselves like puddles of living clay, always searching, always patrolling. Plant cells rise beside us, stiff and strong, their walls made of cellulose, holding emerald chloroplasts that sparkle faintly as they capture the light of a distant sun. It feels alive here in a way that is both beautiful and strange, and yet even now we are only visitors at the surface of something far deeper. So we take the next step and shrink again. Now the membranes that held the cells together are no longer smooth skins, but tangled mosaics of molecules. They are not seamless walls, but carpets of tiny protein structures, each folded into strange geometric patterns that jut out like towers and tunnels. Lipid molecules line up together like soldiers, their heads facing outward, their tails tucked inward, creating the barrier of the cell. At this scale, the cell wall no longer feels solid. It feels like a restless sea, its parts shifting, moving, opening and closing gates. Channels open and shut, allowing ions to pass like doors on hinges. Transport proteins haul nutrients through, shaped like pulleys or pumps, each operating without thought, just obeying chemistry. You realize that the cell is not a static building, it is a bustling city, every piece moving, every second alive with countless transactions. Shrink again, and the organelles that once floated softly inside the cell are now vast fortresses made of proteins. The mitochondria, once a speck drifting, are now endless labyrinths of folded membranes, their walls bristling with machines that pump protons, generating the tiny sparks of energy that keep every creature alive. ATP synthase, a name you may have heard in biology class, now looms before you as a titanic rotary engine. It spins as protons flow through it, crafting molecules of energy like a mill grinding grain into flour. At this size, biology feels mechanical and magical all at once. The chloroplasts, too, are not just soft emerald jewels, but grand halls where light is captured by pigments, channeled into pathways, and transformed into sugar. The green of a leaf is not a colour anymore. It is a factory, a living solar panel run by machines that have existed for billions of years. Another step smaller, and the molecules themselves come into view. Proteins that once looked like pillars are revealed to be long chains of amino acids, folded intricately into knots of every imaginable shape. Some look like spirals, others like sheets, still others like strange tangled ropes. They are not built with intention, not designed by hands, but by physics, chemistry, and evolution, folding naturally into the forms that allow them to work. They lock into other molecules like keys into locks, triggering reactions, building, breaking, mending, signaling. At this scale, the familiar language of life, enzymes, hormones, messengers, suddenly feels vast and endless. A single protein is not just a thing, it is a tool, a worker, a citizen of this molecular metropolis. And then we shrink further. Now we enter the world of DNA, that iconic double helix, the twisting ladder of life. What once seemed like an abstract diagram in textbooks now looms as a vast spiraling structure, its rails made of sugar and phosphate, its rungs built from the letters of life: adenine, thymine, cytosine, guanine. Each rung paired with its opposite, holding the code that shapes every living being. As you drift closer, you see that this ladder is not still, but gently coiling, twisting, bending. Proteins cling to it like repair crews, scanning for errors, patching mistakes. Helicase enzymes crawl along it, unzipping the strands, allowing them to be copied. Polymerases follow, stitching new pieces into place. This is not just a molecule, it is an archive, a library, a living script, written billions of years ago and copied endlessly, generation after generation. Now, as we drift even smaller, we notice that these molecules, whether protein or DNA or sugar, are not solid at all. They are clouds of atoms bound together, vibrating gently, moving ceaselessly. Their bonds are not rigid beams, but energetic dances, shared electrons tying them together. You begin to sense that solidity itself is an illusion. At this scale, the world is not made of hard edges, but of probabilities and motions. The sugar molecule in your tea, the oxygen in your lungs, the chlorophyll in a leaf, they are all arrangements of atoms, endlessly shifting, endlessly alive with energy. And here, at the edge of molecules, we pause again. Because the next step is atoms themselves. The building blocks not just of biology, but of everything. From the grass beneath your feet to the stars above your head, all built from the same tiny patterns repeated endlessly. That is where we will go next, into the world of atoms. We leave behind the twisting spirals of DNA and the folded ribbons of proteins, and now we shrink again, smaller than molecules, smaller than the chains and lattices that build life, until we arrive at the level of atoms themselves, the word you've heard countless times, the building blocks of matter. And yet, what you see here is not what you might have expected. From textbooks, you may imagine atoms as tiny solar systems, little planets spinning around a central sun, electrons circling in neat orbits, protons and neutrons clustered in the middle. But the truth, as you float here now, is stranger, more diffuse, more dreamlike. The atom is not a miniature machine, it is a cloud. At the heart of the atom lies the nucleus, tiny beyond measure, a dense knot of protons and neutrons, bound together by a force so strong that it overwhelms all others. Surrounding it is not a set of orbiting particles, but a cloud of probability. Electrons do not travel in perfect circles. They shimmer in regions, zones, shells. Their presence is like fog, sometimes thicker in one place, thinner in another, but never fixed, never certain. To be here is to realize that solidity itself is not solid. It is the illusion of stability built from endless motion. You drift closer, and the nucleus itself begins to expand in your vision, once a speck, now a mountain of density. Protons glowing faintly, each carrying a positive charge, each repelling the others. Yet they cling together because of the strong nuclear force, an invisible glue that holds them tight despite their natural urge to fly apart. Neutrons drift beside them, neutral, padding the tension, allowing the balance to hold. The dance here is precarious, fragile, and yet this fragile knot is the heart of every atom in the universe. Look outward again to the electrons. Their cloud stretches far, far beyond the tiny nucleus. If the nucleus were a marble, the electron cloud would reach the size of a stadium. Empty space dominates the atom. Almost all of it is nothingness, and yet this emptiness is what gives structure to the world you know. The hardness of wood, the shimmer of water, the glitter of glass, all born from interactions between electron clouds, not from solid contact, but from fields, charges, repulsions. We touch nothing, and yet we feel everything. Now let's drift across different kinds of atoms. A hydrogen atom first. Simple, elegant, the very first born in the universe. Just a single proton, wrapped by a single electron cloud. In simplicity, it is perfection. Then helium, with 2 protons, 2 neutrons, 2 electrons. Stable, calm, the gentle gas of stars and balloons. Then carbon, with 6 protons, 6 neutrons, 6 electrons. The backbone of life, forming bonds with ease, chaining into rings and lattices, building everything from diamond to DNA. And then iron, with its dense nucleus, forged in the hearts of stars, carried outward by supernova explosions, seeding the universe with the stuff of blood and stone. Every atom tells a story. Every atom is a relic of creation. As you shrink further, you begin to notice how electrons behave, not as beads, but as waves. They shimmer, diffuse, occupy orbitals shaped like spheres, dumbbells, and strange clouds. They interfere, overlap, spread, and yet they carry the patterns that give chemistry its rules. Atoms do not collide like marbles. They share electrons, exchange them, borrow them, release them. This is bonding. This is the reason molecules exist at all. Step closer still, and the nucleus itself opens before you. Here the protons and neutrons are revealed not as indivisible particles, but as tiny realms themselves, each made of quarks, held together by gluons, names that sound playful, whimsical even, but the forces they represent are anything but light. Quarks jitter endlessly, never seen alone, always bound. Gluons snap them together like invisible cords, weaving a fabric of energy that becomes matter. Here you feel the first whispers of quantum rules, the laws that say particles are also waves, that positions are not fixed but probabilistic, that the act of observing changes the thing observed. It is disorienting but also strangely peaceful, because you realize that certainty is not the foundation of the universe. Uncertainty is. And from that uncertainty, patterns emerge, stable enough for stars to shine, stable enough for life to form, stable enough for you to stand here imagining all of it. The atom you stand within is unimaginably empty, and yet unimaginably full of energy. Its nucleus is a furnace of binding force. Its electrons dance in probability clouds. Together, these opposites form the world we see as solid, stable, familiar. The chair you sit in, the hand you hold, the air you breathe, all made from the same dances, repeated endlessly, invisibly. Pause here, breathe, and let the strangeness settle, because the next step will take us further still, beyond atoms, beyond quarks, into the edge of physics itself, into the place where the rules blur and the universe speaks in equations more than images. But for now, rest in the atom, the smallest unit of matter we can still call a thing, a bridge between the world we know and the world that waits beyond. We rest for a moment inside the atom, watching its nucleus hold itself together with invisible force, and its electrons drifting like misty clouds, never fixed, never still. The structure feels like the smallest thing, and yet as we shrink again, we discover it is only the beginning of something stranger. Now the protons and neutrons that seemed so solid, so compact, begin to open, and inside them, the world divides again. They are not indivisible beads, but little bundles made of smaller pieces still. These pieces are called quarks, tiny, jittering points of energy, and binding them together are gluons, the carriers of the strong force, the cosmic glue that keeps everything from flying apart. Here, the rules of reality twist into unfamiliar shapes. Quarks never exist alone. They are always bound in groups, pairs or trios. They jitter, tugged by gluons that act like elastic cords. The more you pull them apart, the tighter the cords snap. It is as if the universe has decreed that quarks must live in company, never solitary, never free. And because of this, the protons and neutrons remain whole. Little prisons of companionship, bound forever by the strongest force in nature. We shrink again, and the world grows fuzzy. The outlines of quarks and gluons are not sharp. They blur, shift, shimmer. Here, matter and energy no longer feel like opposites. They are interchangeable, flowing one into another. A gluon, exchanged between quarks, is not a solid thing but a flash of energy, appearing and vanishing in a heartbeat. At this scale, permanence is an illusion. The world is made not of things, but of interactions. Look around now and you see a sea of particles flickering in and out of existence. These are virtual particles, ephemeral ghosts, borrowed from energy itself. They appear, vanish, reappear, constantly rewriting the emptiness around you. What we call empty space is anything but empty. It is a bubbling foam of temporary existence, restless, humming, alive. And here, deeper still, the idea of place begins to crumble. Particles do not have fixed locations. They exist in probabilities. A quark may be here, or there, or both, until it is observed. And in that moment, it collapses into a single state. The act of measurement is not passive. It changes the outcome. The universe is not a stage on which events play out. It is a script that rewrites itself each time we look at it. Drift further, and the uncertainty grows stronger. You reach the scale where Heisenberg's principle rules. The more precisely you try to know where a particle is, the less you can know about its motion. The more you know its momentum, the less you know about its position. Certainty dissolves completely here, replaced by probability, by wave functions, by distributions that stretch across space. The atom is no longer a thing, but a cloud of possibilities. And yet, from these strange rules, stability arises. Electrons form shells not by circling, but by existing in certain probability patterns. The shapes we call orbitals, spheres, dumbbells, lobes, are not places electrons travel, but regions where they are most likely to be. Chemistry, biology, life itself, all built from these ghostly patterns, from uncertainty given structure. You notice now how time itself feels different. At human scale, time is steady, predictable, linear, but here, particles flit in and out of existence in fractions of fractions of fractions of a second. They ignore the rules we cling to, living in borrowed energy, vanishing before debt can be collected. And the strange truth is this quantum borrowing is allowed. It is not a flaw, but a foundation. Without it, forces would fail, atoms would not hold, stars would not burn. You drift closer to a quark, and even here it refuses to appear as a tiny marble. Instead, it is a vibration, a concentration of field, a knot of energy, rather than a nugget of substance. It is not a place, but a happening, not a bead, but a ripple. And as you hover, you begin to sense the vast tapestry beneath all particles, the quantum fields. These fields stretch everywhere, infinite, omnipresent. Every particle is not born alone, but as an excitation of a field, a little wave cresting and then vanishing. Electrons, photons, quarks, all are ripples in invisible seas that permeate the universe. Here, at this depth, you realize there is no bottom yet, because beneath quarks, beneath gluons, beneath every flicker and wave, there may still be more. Strings, perhaps vibrating threads of energy predicted by theory but never seen. or loops, tiny spinning geometries curling space itself, or something else entirely, something language cannot capture, something the human mind can only approach with metaphor. And beneath even these guesses lies the limit of knowledge, the Planck length, a size so small that the concepts of space and time themselves begin to unravel. At this edge, our equations falter, our theories clash. General relativity and quantum mechanics refuse to shake hands. We have no clear picture here, only hints, whispers of a deeper order, a hidden architecture of the cosmos we are not yet able to see. So here, at the border of the quantum world, we pause again. The journey from the human scale to this scale has dissolved everything familiar. Solids became membranes, membranes became molecules, molecules became atoms, atoms became quarks, and quarks dissolved into fields and probabilities. Each step smaller has not brought solidity, but strangeness. Each layer reveals that what we think of as real is only a surface, beneath which lies something more abstract, more elusive, more mysterious. And as you rest here, floating in the hum of probability fields, you realize that this is not just the foundation of matter, it is the foundation of possibility. Everything you see, touch, feel, think, every star, every ocean, every thought in your mind arises from this restless, uncertain, vibrating sea of quantum fields. Out of uncertainty, reality blooms. Out of nothing, everything. We will drift further still, but for now, we pause and let the quantum silence wash over us, a silence that is not empty but infinitely full. We are already smaller than atoms, smaller than protons and neutrons, smaller than the quarks that compose them. And now we drift still further, slipping past the shimmering fog of probability, past the flickering sea of virtual particles that bubble in and out of existence, until we reach the very edge of what we can know, the Planck scale. Here distance itself ceases to feel stable. The Planck length is unimaginably small, 1/10 million trillion trillionth the size of the nucleus of an atom. So tiny that comparing it to the size of a proton is like comparing a proton to the size of the entire solar system. At this level, the very idea of measurement begins to collapse, because to measure you must interact, and to interact you must use energy. And at this size, the energy required to probe space would be so immense that it would create a black hole. The act of observing would tear the very fabric you hope to see. So the Planck scale is not just small, it is the end of smallness, the boundary of distance itself. Beyond this, our language falters, our equations break, and reality itself seems to fold into paradox. Theories try to whisper what lies beyond. Some say that space is not continuous, but pixelated, like a digital screen, that beneath the smooth appearance of the cosmos lies a lattice of indivisible units of length and time. Others imagine strings, unimaginably tiny filaments, vibrating in higher dimensions, each vibration giving rise to what we call particles, quarks, electrons, photons, all different notes of the same hidden instrument. Still others speak of loops, tiny rings of energy twisting and linking, forming a fabric from which space and time themselves emerge. At this level, dimensions themselves may multiply, not 3 of space and 1 of time, but 10 or 11 or more, curled so tightly we never notice them. Like threads woven into cloth, hidden until you look closely. The universe you thought was vast may be only a shadow projected from a deeper multi-dimensional structure, and here at the bottom, we may stand at the seam between our reality and another, stitched together in ways we cannot see, shrink further still, and even time begins to lose meaning. Seconds and hours dissolve into flickers, into quantum foam, a roiling sea where space-time is not smooth but jagged, frothing, unstable. At one moment it stretches, the next it collapses. Here past and future blur, cause and effect weave into loops. The arrow of time we cling to becomes uncertain. And yet, even in this chaos, patterns may exist. The vibrations of strings, the twists of loops, the weave of fields. Out of this restless storm, order could emerge. Stars, galaxies, atoms, and you. You are built upon the silence of a foundation we cannot touch, cannot see, but can only imagine. It is humbling to realize that we cannot go further, not with microscopes, not with accelerators, not with any tool of physics we now possess. The Planck scale is a horizon, the place where knowledge dissolves into speculation, where imagination must take over. To stand here is to admit the limits of human sight, and yet also to feel awe at the vastness of what still waits to be discovered. So here we pause, not because we choose to, but because we must. At the Planck horizon, we are confronted with the edges of science and the beginning of wonder. The smallest scale is not an end, but an invitation, a reminder that the universe is stranger than we can measure and deeper than we can yet understand. As we rest in this silence, you realize something profound. Every step of shrinking from the human scale down to this final edge has not revealed smaller and smaller things, but stranger and stranger ideas. We began with familiar objects, chairs and grass and hands. We sank into cells and molecules, into DNA and proteins. We slipped through atoms and electrons, into quarks and gluons, and finally into fields, vibrations, and foams of probability. The deeper we went, the less the world resembled things at all, and the more it resembled patterns, possibilities, and ideas. Perhaps reality itself is not built from stuff, but from relationships, not from particles, but from principles, not from objects, but from mathematics written into the void. And in that thought, the journey downward merges with the journey outward, because the same mystery that governs the smallest scale also governs the largest. The galaxies, the expansion of space, the flow of time. So we close our descent here, at the horizon where physics bows to imagination, the place where space is no longer space and time is no longer time, the place where all stories of shrinking end and new stories of creation begin. We linger at the edge of the Planck horizon, a place where measurement dissolves, where space and time themselves become restless foam, where vibrations, loops, or strings may hum beneath all that exists. And then slowly, gently, we begin to rise again. The shrinking has carried us down into abstraction, but now we retrace the steps, letting each scale unfold upward into clarity. Each step feels like emerging from a dream, each layer building upon the last, until the familiar world returns. We leave behind the speculation of strings and foams, and we re-enter the domain of quarks and gluons. Here we see again the jittering quarks bound in trios, lashed by gluons like elastic cords, forever pulling one another close, forever resisting separation. Their dance is constant, restless, charged with energy. They are not beads, but ripples of fields, yet together they build the protons and neutrons that give substance to atoms. Rise a little higher, and protons and neutrons assemble again into nuclei, tight knots of matter bound by the strongest force in the universe, their density unfathomable, their unity fragile but resilient. The strong nuclear force glues them together against their natural urge to repel. And this tension is the balance that allows atoms to exist at all. Now the electrons return to view, shimmering not as particles but as probability clouds, wrapping the nucleus like mist, forming shells, orbitals, regions of possibility. Their behavior is uncertain, and yet from that uncertainty arises chemistry. Their sharing and trading, their bonds and repulsions form the scaffolding of molecules. From the abstract haze of quantum fields, solidity is reborn. We rise again, and molecules assemble before us, proteins folding into intricate knots of spirals and sheets, enzymes waiting to catalyze, hormones drifting as messengers. Each molecule no longer a haze of atoms, but a tool, a structure, a piece of machinery in the city of life. DNA twists upward too, its double helix spiraling endlessly, a ladder of code, storing the history of life across billions of years. At this scale, molecules are no longer abstractions. They are blueprints and workers, builders and archivists. Climb further, and we re-enter the world of cells. Membranes reassemble into soft walls. Channels open and close like gates. Organelles drift like factories inside. Mitochondria spin their tiny turbines. Chloroplasts catch their light. The living city hums again with order, with motion, with purpose. Red blood cells drift past like tiny rafts carrying oxygen. White cells crawl, plant cells stand tall. The great diversity of life begins here, one cell at a time. Step upward again, and the skin regains its texture. Fingerprints re-emerge as ridges, paws as wells, tiny hairs bristle as forests. The ants that once looked like monsters shrink into familiar insects again. Pollen returns to floating grains, flies to creatures with wings instead of thunderclaps. The world begins to feel less alien, though still layered with detail you had never noticed before. Rise still further, and threads of fabric return to weave across one another. Strands no longer ropes but fibers, fibers no longer forests, but the smooth feel of clothing against skin. The moss beneath your feet shrinks back into softness, the pebbles into grains of dust. The blades of grass no longer tower overhead but return to their ordinary size, brushing lightly against your legs. And then finally, you stand again at human scale, the size from which you began. The field stretches around you, familiar and calm. The night sky hangs above, stars shimmering, the Milky Way arching across in soft bands of light, and you are simply you again. The right size, the size that feels natural, the size at which your world is built. But now you carry something you did not before, the memory of scales beneath your sight. You know that the solidity of the world is an illusion of fields and probabilities, that within every grain of sand lies an atom, within every atom a nucleus, within every nucleus quarks, and beneath even those, a restless sea of uncertainty, a foam at the edge of space and time. You know that the skin you touch, the chair you sit in, the air you breathe, are all woven from emptiness and motion, from bonds and forces unseen. And as you gaze at your hand, you no longer see only flesh and lines. You see the proteins folded inside, the DNA spiraling in every cell, the atoms vibrating ceaselessly, the quarks jittering within their prisons, the fields stretching beneath them all. You see the entire ladder of scales hidden beneath the ordinary, and you know you are both vast and small, both solid and ghostly, both certain and uncertain. So we pause here, at human scale once more, but with a deeper vision. A vision that stretches downward to the smallest and upward to the largest. For the next journey will not be smaller, but larger, beyond the human scale, beyond the Earth, into the cosmos, where galaxies are born and stars burn, where space itself stretches and where infinity whispers again. But for now, rest here, standing in the quiet field, knowing that beneath your feet lies an entire universe of scales you will never see with your eyes, but which exists endlessly within and around you. We stand again in the quiet field, the grass brushing your ankles, the night stretched above in endless indigo. And now, instead of shrinking, we begin to rise. We expand outward, letting the familiar world grow smaller beneath us. First, your body itself seems to shrink into the field, your hands becoming details, your hair a blur, and then you are rising higher. The houses nearby turn into small shapes, the trees flatten into patterns, the roads wind like ribbons across the ground. Your entire town becomes a tiny patchwork, faint lights glimmering in the night, cars nothing more than sparks moving across the black. Higher still, and the land opens wide. Rivers cut across the surface like veins of silver. Lakes glisten softly. Mountains rise as wrinkles, their snowy peaks glowing faintly in the moonlight. You see the clouds too, swirling and spreading in great sheets of white and grey, drifting slowly like breath across the face of the earth. And then the earth curves beneath you, the horizon no longer a straight line but a gentle arc. You realize now you are high above, the planet itself revealing its shape, a sphere of blue and white and green. The oceans spread vast and endless, glittering where moonlight touches. Storms spiral slowly in white swirls, their arms curling over the sea. The continents stretch out, enormous and detailed, though from here they seem peaceful, softened, free of borders and names. Step higher still, and the earth becomes smaller. The blues deepen into jewel tones, the clouds curl across its face like strokes of paint, and nearby the moon appears, pale and cratered, hanging close yet distant, its surface scarred and ancient, grey with history. Its pull is still felt here, in the tides below, but now it is simply another world, orbiting in quiet companionship. You rise farther, and Earth and Moon together become a pair, a double dance in the blackness. Their gravity ties them, their motion eternal. Earth glows in colour, the Moon in silver, together circling the sun. And then the sun itself comes into view, not as the warm daylight you know, but as a vast blazing sphere of fire. Its surface, a restless ocean of plasma, bubbling and erupting, flames leaping taller than entire planets. It is not a calm lamp, but a roaring furnace, a star that has burned for billions of years and will burn for billions more. And yet, from this distance, it feels steady, dependable, life-giving. Now you notice the other planets. Mercury racing closest to the sun, small and scarred, a rocky husk. Venus, shrouded in thick clouds, bright but suffocating, a world of endless storms and heat. Mars, red and cold, dust plains and mountains higher than any on Earth. Jupiter, enormous, striped with storms and crowned with its great red spot, a hurricane so vast that 3 Earths could fit inside. Saturn, elegant, encircled by shimmering rings of ice and stone. Uranus and Neptune, pale giants at the edge, swirling with methane blues. Each planet a character in this solar family, each carrying moons of its own, each shaped by gravity and time. From here, the scale begins to shift again. The sun, once unimaginable in its size, is only one star among billions. Beyond it lies the Oort cloud, a halo of icy bodies stretching far into the dark. And past that, the stars of the Milky Way begin to glitter in their true numbers. You look, and there are no gaps, no emptiness. Only stars upon stars, packed so densely that the night sky becomes a river of light. The Milky Way stretches across space like a band of silver dust, its spirals filled with suns, its heart burning with hidden fire. And here you pause, to feel the scale, to let it sink in. You are one being, once standing in a field, now rising beyond your planet, beyond your star, into a galaxy too large for imagination. But we will drift to those later. For now, rest among the stars of the Milky Way, the great river of light that is your home. We rest now among the stars of the Milky Way, billions upon billions of suns spread across spiraling arms, each star with its own history, its own planets, its own chance of harboring life. From here, the galaxy stretches like a great pinwheel of light, 100,000 light-years across, its arms curved and delicate, its center glowing with dense radiance where stars swarm close together. The dark bands that streak across its face are not voids but clouds of dust and gas, nurseries where new stars are born, hidden in shadow until they ignite. As we drift outward, the Milky Way itself begins to shrink behind us, its billions of stars blending into a single shape, a disk of light floating in the black. We see that it is not alone. Surrounding it are neighboring galaxies, each with its own pattern, some spiraling gracefully, some stretched into ellipses, some twisted and irregular as if shaped by collisions long ago. The Andromeda galaxy appears too, vast and majestic, larger even than the Milky Way, drifting slowly closer. In a few billion years the two will meet, their stars intermingling in a cosmic dance. But for now they float as companions across the dark sea. Together, the Milky Way, Andromeda, and dozens of smaller galaxies form what we call the local group, a family of galaxies bound by gravity, orbiting a common center, drifting together through the void. To us it feels large, millions of light years across, but in truth it is only a tiny patch in the grander structure. As we rise farther, these groups themselves begin to cluster. The Virgo cluster, for instance, emerges into view, containing thousands of galaxies, each with billions of stars. Galaxies swirl like fireflies in a vast volume of space, colliding, merging, tugging at one another with invisible gravity. The light from their stars takes millions of years to cross the cluster, so that to look across is to look into the past. Step higher still, and clusters themselves weave into superclusters, colossal structures of unimaginable size, spanning hundreds of millions of light years. Galaxies line up along filaments, strands of light and matter stretched like threads across the black. Between them are voids, great empty regions where few galaxies exist, vast hollows hundreds of millions of light years wide. The universe, seen from here, looks like a web, a cosmic network, bright strands where galaxies gather, dark gaps in between. This structure is not random, it is the fingerprint of the Big Bang itself. The ripples in the earliest plasma of the universe stretched and grew under gravity, shaping filaments, clusters, and voids. What you see now is the frozen pattern of ancient sound waves written across billions of light years. The universe is not evenly spread, it is textured, patterned, laced with threads of light. And as you drift farther, the filaments themselves begin to fade. The scale grows so large that galaxies shrink into points, clusters into specks, superclusters into faint glows. The cosmic web recedes into a haze of faint threads, until finally you see the edge of the observable universe, a horizon of light 13 billion years away, the cosmic microwave background. It is not bright now, but faint, a whisper of heat stretched into microwaves by the expansion of space. This is the afterglow of creation itself, the remnant of the Big Bang, the moment when the universe became transparent, when light could finally move freely. Beyond it we cannot see, not because nothing exists there, but because light has not had time to reach us. The observable universe is not the universe entire. It is only what time has allowed us to glimpse. Here you pause again, at the edge of sight, realizing that from the smallest scales of quarks and strings to the largest scales of filaments and horizons, the universe is one continuous story. Matter binding together, forces shaping structures, time stretching outward. The cosmos is not infinite in what we can observe, but infinite in what it suggests. You are now outside everything familiar. The Earth is gone, the Sun is gone, even the Milky Way is invisible. Only threads of galaxies stretching like frost on glass. And beyond that, only silence. So here we rest, on the brink of the knowable universe, listening to the faint echo of the beginning. We pause at the edge of the observable universe, where the cosmic microwave background glows faintly as a whisper from the beginning of time. Here light itself marks the limit of what we can see. Not because the universe ends, but because the story of light has not had time to reach us. Beyond this horizon lies mystery, a darkness that could hide anything or everything. As we drift here, the question rises naturally. Does the universe end, or does it go on forever? The truth is that we do not know, and perhaps we cannot know. But the possibilities are as beautiful as they are humbling. One vision is that the universe is infinite, stretching endlessly in every direction. No boundary, no edge, no outside. Just galaxies upon galaxies, clusters upon clusters, repeating without end. If this is true, then even beyond the farthest light we can ever see, more stars burn, more worlds spin, more wonders unfold. The night sky above your head would be only a fragment, a single page in a book without final chapter. But another vision suggests something different, that the universe may be finite, curved back on itself like the surface of a sphere. If you traveled far enough in one direction, you would return from the other side, never crossing an edge, but looping endlessly. The cosmos itself may be a shape too vast for us to picture, a geometry of space and time folded upon itself. And then there is the idea of inflation, the rapid expansion that shaped the cosmos in its earliest instant. If inflation was eternal, then our universe may be only one bubble among many. Each bubble a universe with its own laws, its own constants, its own physics. Some could collapse instantly, others could expand forever, others could birth galaxies unlike our own. Together, this is called the multiverse, an endless sea of universes, of which ours is only a single drop. Imagine drifting outward from our own bubble, past its horizon, into a greater darkness, and then encountering another bubble, glowing faintly with its own galaxies, and beyond that, another and another. An ocean of universes without end. It is speculation, yes, but speculation built on the same physics that shaped our own beginning. And so we cannot dismiss it entirely. And then comes the greatest question of all. If there are infinite universes and infinite possibilities, then perhaps somewhere there is another version of you, standing in another field, looking up at another sky, listening to another telling of this same story. Perhaps the cosmos, in its vastness, repeats, not in exact detail, but in variations, patterns recurring like ripples on an infinite pond. Or perhaps not. Perhaps the universe is singular, rare, one of a kind. And if so, then everything you know, every star, every galaxy, every life, exists only here, only once, fragile and unique beyond measure. Here at the edge, the line between science and philosophy blurs. The equations can carry us far, but then they fade. And what remains are possibilities, guesses, dreams. The human mind is too small to picture infinity fully, and yet it longs to. Like a child pressing against the glass of an endless sea, knowing it cannot swim it, but still marveling at its reach. As you float at this horizon, you begin to feel the strangeness of perspective. From quarks and gluons at the bottom, to galaxies and clusters at the top, the universe is both boundless and bounded, both knowable and unknowable. You realize that every question answered creates new questions, that knowledge is not a finish line, but an expanding circle, always revealing more of what lies beyond. And here, in this quiet moment, you understand that infinity is not just a number, it is a feeling, a sense of endlessness that humbles you, that softens you, that lets you drift into the vast silence without fear. Because whether the universe ends, or loops, or multiplies, or stretches forever, it is beautiful, and it is enough to know that you are a part of it. So we rest again, at the brink of infinity, gazing outward into the unseen, letting the mind wander where the eyes cannot follow. We return to the quiet field, the place where the journey began. And as you stand here now, you carry with you the memory of both extremes, the smallest, where quarks, jitter, and uncertainty rules, and the largest, where galaxies weave into a cosmic web and horizons stretch beyond sight. And in between, all the familiar scales, the cells, the molecules, the atoms, the mountains, the planets, the stars, each layer complete in itself, each layer a world. And so the question rises, what is the world really? Is it the grass beneath your feet, soft and swaying? Or is it the cells within the grass, each a tiny factory of light and water? Or is it the molecules in those cells, folded and spinning, exchanging energy? Or the atoms, empty yet strong? Or the quarks, restless knots of force? Or is the world the galaxy, the web of stars, the cluster of universes drifting outward? At every size, the world looks different. And yet at every size, it is equally real. Philosophers once wondered if reality exists independently, or only in the mind that perceives it. And here, standing with these scales in memory, you realize something important. Our perception is always limited, always tuned to one window of scale. The human eye sees between a fraction of a millimeter and a few kilometers. The human mind thinks in lifetimes, not billions of years. We live at a middle scale, where the air feels empty but is full of molecules, where the ground feels solid but is mostly space, where the stars look still but are rushing apart. What you saw by shrinking is that the world is far richer than your senses reveal. And what you saw by growing is that the world is far vaster than your mind can hold. The truth is that no single scale is complete. At each size, the universe tells a different story. The microscopic scale tells a story of restless motion, molecules colliding, proteins folding, DNA storing information like a cosmic library. The human scale tells a story of touch and sound, of walking through fields, of tasting water and hearing music. The planetary scale tells a story of orbits and seasons, tides pulled by moons, climates shifting with sunlight. The galactic scale tells a story of stars born and dying, of spirals turning across billions of years. And the cosmic scale tells a story of expansion, of filaments and voids, of origins hidden in faint background light. To live at human size is to forget these other stories, but to glimpse them, even in imagination, is to remember that reality is layered, like a book written in many languages, each page legible only if you step into its scale. There is also humility here, because at every scale, detail is endless. The cell you saw was not simple but filled with organelles and machines. The protein you saw was not a shape, but a symphony of folding and motion. The DNA strand you saw was not a rope, but a library written in code. The galaxy you saw was not a smear of light, but billions of stars, each with their own complexity. The larger you zoom, the smaller the details appear, but they never vanish. They are always waiting if you look closer. Perhaps this is the secret, that the world is infinitely detailed no matter how you view it, that the same patch of grass is a meadow, a forest of cells, a city of molecules, a cloud of atoms, a field of quarks, and none of these views is wrong, but none is complete. Only together do they whisper the fullness of what is real. And so perception becomes not just sight, but scale. To a child, the world is the height of a toy. To an ant, it is a jungle of stems. To a cell, it is a membrane and a soup. To a galaxy, it is gravity and light. The same universe appears different to each. And perhaps we too are only one way of perceiving, one layer of the story. As you stand in the field, you realize that your perspective is both precious and partial. You cannot see the quarks with your eyes, nor the galaxies beyond with your body, but you can imagine them. And imagination is its own perception, a way to stretch beyond your limits, to walk scales your senses cannot. This is what scale teaches, that reality is not singular, but many-layered. That every angle is valid, but every angle is incomplete. That the beauty of the world is not in one view, but in the endless tapestry of all views together. So you rest here, between the small and the vast, knowing that the world you live in is richer than you can ever fully hold, but also knowing that this richness is not hidden, it is all around you, waiting at every scale, and that is enough. We have looked at space, shrinking smaller and smaller until solidity dissolved into fields and probabilities. We have looked at size as it grew, larger and larger until galaxies became threads in a cosmic web. We have thought of time as brief as the breath of an insect, as long as the burn of a star. And now, as we continue drifting, we turn to another truth of the universe: motion. For nothing in this cosmos is still. Not you, not the mountains, not even the galaxies themselves. Everything flows, everything moves. At the human scale, motion is familiar. You walk through a field, your footsteps pressing against the earth. You watch clouds drift across the sky, their shapes shifting minute by minute. You see a river winding, carrying water from hill to ocean. To you, these movements feel calm, steady, manageable. Motion happens at a pace you can witness, measure, trust, but shrink again in thought, and motion grows wild. At the scale of cells, molecules bump and collide endlessly, jittering from heat, pulled and pushed by chemical attractions. Within you now, at this very moment, countless proteins are walking along filaments, carrying nutrients like workers along highways. Vesicles bubble and merge. DNA unwinds and rewinds as if it breathes. The cell you imagine as a tiny, quiet room is in truth a bustling metropolis of motion, unceasing, unrelenting. Smaller still, and motion becomes stranger. Atoms vibrate with energy. Their electrons leap between levels, emitting light as they fall. Molecules spin, stretch, bend, twist. Entire structures reshaping with invisible dances. Here, motion is not a choice, not a will, but a law. Everything in restless trembling, everything flowing. And in the quantum realm, motion is so fast and subtle that the word itself almost fails. Particles flicker in and out of existence, positions blur, waves overlap. The very concept of stillness disappears, because probability itself is always moving. Even the vacuum, the emptiness you imagine as calm, boils with activity too quick to see. Now rise outward again. To mountains, motion feels so slow that you might call it still. But glaciers carve valleys inch by inch, rivers erode stone grain by grain, tectonic plates creep across the planet at the pace of fingernails. Given millions of years, entire continents shift, oceans open and close, mountains rise and fall. The stillness you see is only the slowness of motion. Farther still, and planets themselves move ceaselessly. Earth spins on its axis, 1,000 miles per hour at the equator, carrying you through space without your notice. It orbits the sun at nearly 30 kilometers each second, dragging the moon along. The solar system itself orbits the center of the Milky Way, racing around a black hole so massive that millions of stars whirl with you in a single spiral. Beyond that, the galaxy itself drifts through the local group, colliding slowly with its neighbors. The local group flows toward the Virgo cluster, drawn by gravity into larger structures. Even clusters move, drawn into filaments, streaming through space in patterns set long ago. On the largest scales, galaxies do not simply sit. They stream, they stretch, they ride the currents of cosmic expansion. And woven through all this is the greatest motion of all, the expansion of the universe itself. Space is not fixed, it stretches. Every galaxy that is not bound to us moves farther away, carried outward on the current of expansion. The farther you look, the faster they go, until at the horizon they vanish from view, receding faster than light can reach you. Motion is not just within the universe, it is the universe. And yet, within all this motion, we still speak of stillness. We sit on chairs, stand in fields, sleep in beds, as if stillness is real. But now you know it is only relative, only a matter of scale. The chair you sit in vibrates with atoms. The earth beneath you spins, orbits, flies. The galaxy streams through space. Stillness is an illusion born of matching pace with what surrounds you. When everything moves together, you call it still, but in truth it is always flow. And so a deeper understanding comes. That perspective is not just about space or time, but also about motion. To one scale, you are calm. To another, you are restless. To one scale, you are solid. To another, you are mostly emptiness. To one scale, you are still. To another, you are rushing endlessly through the cosmos. This is the lesson hidden in scale, that truth depends on where you stand. That no view is complete, but each is meaningful. That reality is not one thing, but many. So we begin now to drift towards stillness, not because the universe slows, but because you begin to let go of needing to measure. You stand again in the field, the grass swaying, the stars wheeling above, and you feel the motion all around you, cells buzzing, earth spinning, galaxies streaming. But you also feel peace. The peace of knowing that stillness is only perspective, and that perspective is always yours to hold. And as you breathe in and out, slowly, gently, you sense that this journey is beginning to close. You have traveled smaller and larger, faster and slower, and now you hover in the middle, where all these truths intersect. The human scale, fragile, partial, but wondrous. And so we prepare to drift toward the end, not as a sharp conclusion, but as a gentle return, a landing, a soft touch back into the familiar world.